We're going to start chapter 2, which looks at transformations. So transformation is when you're taking a shape and you're rotating it, turning it, you're reflecting it or flipping it, or translating it or sliding it. So remember, for these lectures, you can pause and resume when you need to, when you've caught up with the lecture notes. So in a transformation, the shape has the same size, it should have the same area, the angles should all be the same, and all the line lengths should be equal. Here's a diagram to show a rotation, just you've turned your triangle, a reflection, notice you flipped it. I always think about looking in the mirror, you've reflected it, an image of itself, and a translation, you've slid it to a different location. The triangles are the same shape, they have the same area, their angles are the same, and all of their line lengths are the same. So in order to understand transformations, the book has broken it down into smaller bits. So we're going to start with 2.1 section, which looks at congruent figures. So two figures are congruent when they have the same size and shape, but they may not be at the same location. So figures would be equal. Figures would be equal if they were at the same points, but we have congruent figures. So here we have three figures. We have figure ABC, figure LMN, and figure XYZ. So we want to see which two are congruent. So they need to have the same area, they need to have the same angles, and their line lengths need to be the same. So if you look at it, it looks like triangle ABC. Looks like triangle ABC is congruent. We'd use the equal sign with a squiggly to show congruent. They're not equal because triangle XYZ is in a different location, but it's very similar. So when two figures are congruent, their corresponding angles and sides are congruent. So if we have this example, here's example 1. If you have triangle ABC, so here's triangle ABC over on the left, and you have triangle XYZ, okay, so draw those. So if we look at that, then we know angle A is also the first one that we wrote here. It should be congruent with angle X, and they are. Then we should also know that line AB, or side AB, is equal to or congruent to side XY. So we can look at the next one and we can say angle B is congruent. So here's B. So notice that has two lines. So we look over here, Y has two lines. It's congruent with angle Y. They also are second in order in the way we wrote them, so they correspond in the way they're written. So A corresponds with X, B corresponds with Y. So then we also know that side BC is congruent. So here's side BC is congruent with side YZ. Okay, then we also know that angle C is congruent with angle Z. So then we also know that sides CA should be congruent with side Z. So let's look. Here's CA. Should be congruent with ZX. So remember to look at them in order. Look to see the angle sign. So here's one angle, so that is congruent with A. The 2 is at B, so that's going to be congruent with Y. The 3 is at C and Z, so those are congruent with each other. So look for those marks. So you're going to try this now. So we have these two congruent figures. I need you to name the corresponding angles and the corresponding sides. So remember, for angle, you start with the angle sign, write down which angle. Typically we start in alphabetical order. So go ahead and try those and then submit your answers and then go to the next part of the video. So we now know the converse of this is also true. So we know two figures are congruent if the corresponding angles and sides are congruent. So if we find that all the angles and all the sides of two triangles are congruent, we can say that that triangle is congruent. Here's another example. So we have this triangle ABC, ABC. All right, and then we over here have X, Y, Z. So we notice that angle X and angle A are both 90 degrees. They're congruent. We know that side AB is 3. And we know that... Okay, so side AB is 3, side XZ is 3, so they're the same. We can also look at angle B. Angle B should be congruent with angle Y, so they are congruent. And angle C is congruent with angle Z. So all the angles are congruent, all the sides are congruent, therefore triangle ABC is congruent to triangle XYZ. Okay, now you're going to try question number 2 on your own. So which square in example 2, so this is example 2 up here, example 2, is congruent to square D over here? Okay, so which one is congruent? Answer that, type in your answer, and then move on. And then we have example 3. You have trapezoids ABC, D, and JKLM are congruent. You need to figure out what the side length of JM should be if they are congruent. So remember, the sides need to be the same if they are congruent. So plug that answer in and move on. And be ready for more examples in class tomorrow.